Tonight, I want to show you what almost no one in the mainstream media has shown you. The most important moments in the speeches of both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Sure, there was a lot of coverage, and there was even some positive coverage, but it's amazing how little the network media included of the most important moments of both of their speeches.
I said that we're going to read this week the book of Ecclesiastes. It's not a book of action. It's a book of meditations, of thought, a perspective on life and on death. And in this book, we read the immortal words of King Solomon. To everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. Et milchama ve'et shalom. A time for peace and a time for war. The last 2 years have been a time of war. The coming years will hopefully be a time for peace. Peace inside Israel and peace outside Israel. I look forward to continuing marching with you on the path we paved together with the Abraham Accords. Under your leadership, we can forge new peace treaties with Arab countries in the region and Muslim countries beyond the region. Abraham's children will work together to build a better future, a future that will unite civilization against barbarism, light against darkness, and hope against despair. And my friends, I believe that with President Trump's leadership, this will happen a lot faster than people think.
Netanyahu is absolutely right, and I'm so glad that he did draw the Knesset and the nation and the world to the attention of the Bible, the book of Ecclesiastes. And it's exactly true. The last 2 years were a time for war, and we pray this is a time for peace. And now with all of the living hostages out, this is serious, that we really can move forward, I believe. And I believe it's a big moment ahead that is going to dramatically expand peace in the region. And I've got a YouTube exclusive that I want you to go take a look at on the Rosenberg Report YouTube channel that goes into more depth. But right now, let me show you a few more clips of what Netanyahu said, much of which the mainstream media, both television and print and digital, just didn't cover.
Mr. President, thousands of our brave soldiers were also wounded, suffering terrible blows to body and soul. Brave soldiers like Ari Spitz. Ari is an American. Ari is an American Israeli who was injured Ari is an American Israeli who was injured in Gaza while searching for Hamas terrorists and weapons. 2 of Ari's comrades were killed in this action, and 10 were injured. Ari was presumed dead, but made a miraculous recovery despite losing 3 limbs. Ari, stand up for a minute alone. Stand up. There you go. There. Ari, you are the spirit of Joshua. You are the spirit of David. You are the spirit of the Maccabees. You are the spirit of Israel. I salute you. We all salute you. Sabine Tassa of Kibbutz Netiv HaAsara is watching us today from the Israeli consulate in Los Angeles. Sabine lost her husband and her oldest son on October 7th. She is the mother of 3 other boys. 2 of them, Koren and Shai, witnessed their father jump on a Hamas grenade to save his 2 sons. We all saw the film of those 2 boys crying out in pain, "Father is dead. Why? Why did God save me?" Mr. President, my friend Donald, I've seen some very tough things in my life. But I couldn't bring myself to watch those boys suffering again. So I didn't see this film except once. Yet Sabine, their mother, has had the strength and fortitude to show this film across the world. And my wife Sarah and I asked her, "Sabine, how do you do it? Why do you do it?" And she answered, "I do it to show the entire world the monsters Israel is fighting and the justice of our cause." This is what she's doing once again in Los Angeles. Sabine, you can hear me now, so I want to tell you on behalf of all of us, you embody the spirit of our biblical heroines, Deborah, Ruth, and Esther. You too are the spirit of Israel, and we all salute you.
These were the most emotional moments in Netanyahu's speech for me. I was so glad that he drew attention to these 2 heroes, these 2 families, and applied their heroism to the spirit of biblical heroes in the Bible and biblical heroines. Again, you don't often see in Israel a leader drawing a biblical parallel, a biblical perspective on what's happening in real time, but I'm so glad that Netanyahu did it in both of these examples.
We have paid a high price for this war, but our enemies now understand just how powerful and just how determined Israel is. They understand that attacking Israel on October 7th was a catastrophic mistake. They understand that Israel is strong and that Israel is here to stay. And this, Mr. President, is the indispensable foundation of peace. Peace through strength. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a momentous day, a day of great joy as the remaining hostages come home. My wife Sarah and I have met with the hostage families many times. There were no words to describe their agony, only tears of bottomless sorrow and unimaginable pain. At the beginning of the war, I promised to bring all the hostages home. Today, with the indispensable help, the determined and focused help, the unremitting help of President Trump and his team, and with the incredible sacrifice and courage of the soldiers of Israel, we are fulfilling that promise. It has been a long journey to get here. In the first week of the war, our brave soldiers put military pressure on Hamas, and the international community put diplomatic pressure on them. This enabled us to secure the release of over 100 hostages. In heroic rescue attempts behind enemy lines, Israel's special forces rescued 8 live hostages and brought back the remains of dozens more. But as time went on, we all know what happened. The diplomatic pressure was turned on its head. More and more governments bought into Hamas's false propaganda, more and more governments succumb to anti-Semitic mobs in their own countries. They just turned on Israel. They called for us to surrender to Hamas demands, just leave Gaza immediately, they said, end the war without committing to disarm Hamas, without committing to demilitarize Gaza. Had Israel succumbed to those demands, not only would Sinwar, Nasrallah, Assad, and Iran's missile and nuclear program remain intact. Not only that, because in no time, the Hamas killers would be back on the border fence, ready to repeat the horrors of October 7th again and again, as they vowed to do. But just at that point of maximum pressure on Israel, a man named Donald J. Trump was elected President of the United States. And ladies and gentlemen, overnight, everything changed. Everything. Mr. President, thanks to your unequivocal backing of Israel, we secured a second hostage deal within weeks of your election. And in the months that followed, we worked closely together to forge a path to bring the remaining hostages home and end the war. End the war in a way that ensures the disarming of Hamas, the demilitarization of Gaza, and that Gaza would never again pose a threat to Israel. 2 months ago, you fully backed my decision to send the IDF into the last Hamas stronghold in Gaza City. You shared my view that this military pressure would help free the hostages. And despite all the criticism, all the naysayers, we were right. Hamas caved in. And 2 weeks ago, you succeeded in doing something miraculous. You succeeded in doing something that no one believed was possible. You brought most of the Arab world, you brought most of the world behind your proposal to free the hostages and end the war.
Well, Netanyahu is absolutely right. This was a miraculous victory, and this is a massive victory for Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu personally. I believe this is truly Bibi Netanyahu's finest moment. And he's had a lot of them over almost 2 decades of being in power, but he's had a lot of mistakes and a lot of failures also, October 7th being the biggest failure of his life. But this is his finest moment. The world told Netanyahu to surrender, but he refused. The world cursed him. The world accused Netanyahu of genocide, but none of that was true. And Netanyahu stayed focused. Like Winston Churchill in World War II, Bibi Netanyahu stood his ground in the face of his enemies. He refused to surrender. He kept his promises. The hostages are home. Hamas is collapsing. A sweeping expansion of the Abraham Accords are coming. And the U.S.-Israeli strategic alliance has never, ever been closer. I want to show you key moments in President Trump's absolutely fantastic and stirring address to the Knesset, Israel's parliament, on Monday. Again, this is stuff that the networks and major newspapers, they're just not showing you. And you can imagine why. The bias of the media is just off the charts. That's why we do what we do on the Rosenberg Report. And of course, we've got full and extensive coverage on All Israel News, so I encourage you to go there as well. Now look, I fully expected this to be one of President Trump's finest speeches. What I did not expect was how often he would either quote or allude to the Bible, both the Old Testament and the New, and how much credit that Trump would actually give Bibi Netanyahu during the speech. Take a look.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, esteemed members of the Knesset and cherished citizens of Israel, we gather on a day of profound joy, of soaring hope, of renewed faith, and above all, a day to give our deepest thanks to the Almighty God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. After 2 harrowing years in darkness and captivity, 20 courageous hostages are returning to the glorious embrace of their families, and it is glorious. 28 more precious loved ones are coming home at last to rest in this sacred soil for all of time. And after so many years of unceasing war and endless danger, today the skies are calm, the guns are silent, the sirens are still, and the sun rises on a holy land that is finally at peace, a land and a region that will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. This is not only the end of a war, this is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
It's amazing that President Trump would begin his speech, literally in the first lines, by thanking the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This shows that Trump himself is not accepting full credit for this, although it is Trump's triumph. Don't get me wrong. This is a huge, this is, if Biden could have done it, he would have done it. He couldn't do it. And Biden's weakness was a serious problem. It looked bad and everybody took advantage of it. Our enemies took advantage of it. Trump came in with strength and he began to move the agenda in partnership with Netanyahu. But he's giving credit right up top of the speech to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's talking about a new dawn of a new Middle East. He's saying that Israel will live, God willing, in peace for all eternity. That's pretty amazing because he's putting this in spiritual terms, which is not typical for Donald Trump. Let's keep going with the different sound bites.
I want to express my gratitude to a man of exceptional courage and patriotism, whose partnership did so much to make this momentous day possible. You know who I'm talking about. There's only one, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Bibi, please stand up. And he is not easy, I want to tell you. He's not the easiest guy to deal with, but that's what makes him great. That's what makes him great.
Hey, well, okay, this is very honest on Trump's part. Gracious, but honest. That he says Bibi Netanyahu he's a strong cup of tea, right? He's a strong cup of coffee. He's not easy to deal with. And Trump says that's what makes him great, meaning he is very fiercely, Netanyahu is very fiercely focused on what he wants, what his objective is, and he does not brook fools, right? He does not suffer fools. He keeps focused, and he goes. This is challenging for other people to work with. Now, Trump loves Netanyahu, and he loves Israel, and he had a similar objective. They did not have different objectives, but Trump had to work with Bibi and try to help Bibi get to the point where Bibi was ready to make peace when everybody else was ready to peace, because at that point, Netanyahu felt very much alone, except for Trump, and he wanted to keep fighting until every Hamas soldier had either been imprisoned or killed. But Trump was like, listen, you basically have victory, take the win.
This week's ceasefire, we've achieved the most challenging breakthrough of them all, the most challenging breakthrough maybe ever. I've never seen anything like it. I've been involved in a lot of success. I have never seen anything like what's going on today all over the world. People are dancing in the streets, not just in Israel. They're dancing in the streets of countries that would have never danced in the street about what's happening today. They're dancing in those streets. So this long and difficult war has now ended. Some people say 3,000 years, some people say 500 years, whatever it is. It's the granddaddy of them all. And in an unprecedented achievement, virtually the entire region has endorsed the plan that Gaza will be immediately demilitarized, that Hamas will be disarmed, and Israel's security will no longer be threatened in any way, shape, or form. So Israel, with our help, has won all that they can by force of arms. You've won. I mean, you've won. Now it's time to translate these victories against terrorists on the battlefield into the ultimate prize of peace and prosperity for the entire Middle East. It's about time you were able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Mr. Opposition Leader. I said he's a very nice opposition leader. I think, no, he's a nice man. Bibi, he's a nice man. He knows what he's doing, right? No, he's a very nice guy. Well, see, now you can be a little bit nicer, Bibi, because you're not at war anymore, Bibi.
Again, what you're watching is a very confident, very relaxed, and very magnanimous Donald Trump. Okay, he's funny. You know, after the seriousness and the darkness and the horror and the pain and the sobriety of the last 2 years, Trump is the victor, Netanyahu is the victor, and it's kind of funny to watch Trump be so nice to the opposition leader, Yair Lapid, whom we've had on the Rosenberg Report. Lapid was very gracious and generous to not only to Trump, of course, but to Bibi Netanyahu in his speech and talked about Israelis coming together in unity. I liked that. Trump liked that. And so there's Trump speaking about Yair Lapid as he's a nice man. And he says, you can be a little nicer, Bibi, because you're not at war anymore. Again, Netanyahu can be very caustic at times when he is in a political fight, not just a military fight. And Netanyahu and Lapid have had their moments that have been, tectonic. But here's Trump saying, look, let's come together. Bibi, you've won. You have conquered. You have won. Now, let's take a breath and let's be nicer to everybody, your own colleagues, as well as the opposition, as well as your Arab neighbors, because we all want to get this thing done together. I thought that was a really interesting moment in the speech.
And they did nothing with this incredible document, the Abraham Accords, but now you can fill them up. Now you have peace, you have people that really like Israel, I'll tell you what, and they like Israel a lot more today than they did even 5 weeks ago. You've made a lot of, you've come back. You've come back strong because it was getting to be a little nasty out there in the world, and ultimately the world wins. You can't beat the world. Oh, I would say to Bibi, it's now time, and he understood it better than anybody, because ultimately, the world's a very big place. And I've said a lot. I said, this piece of land is very small. It's unbelievable what you've done with that tiny, you look at a map even of just not the world, the Middle East, and you have this little dot. And think of what you've done. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Again, this is a huge standing ovation, one of dozens of standing ovations and huge rounds of applause for Donald Trump, because what he's saying is Israel was in a tough spot just 5 weeks ago. 5 weeks ago, it was like the whole world hated Israel and was trying to squeeze and pressure Israel from every direction. And suddenly, Israel's made huge gains, meaning they've gotten all the hostages back, all the living hostages, and Hamas has been forced essentially to surrender and to accept the Trump peace plan, which means that Hamas has to lay down its arms. And Trump is saying that all or most of, let's say, the Arab and Muslim leaders in the region see Israel, see Netanyahu as strong, as a regional superpower now, and that Netanyahu and Israel have come back strong after being in the doghouse, to put it mildly, just a few weeks ago. It's an extraordinary change of momentum and dynamic And Trump is right at the center of it because Trump helped make it happen.
The timing of this is brilliant. And I said, Bibi, you're going to be remembered for this far more than if you kept this thing going, kill. It would be it would not be the same. And I just want to congratulate you for having the courage to say, that's it, we've won, and now let's enjoy our lives and let's rebuild Israel and make it stronger and bigger and better than it's ever been before. You're going to do that. Took a lot of guts.
Yet again, President Trump is praising Netanyahu. You know, there's all this talk about the daylight between Bibi and Trump just a few days ago in the mainstream media. It's completely not true. You can see it. Trump is praising Netanyahu's courage and his guts to make this deal now when Israel really had won. Now I want you to look at a soundbite in which Trump talks about the biblical history and import of Jerusalem. Take a look.
But here between the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, and the hill called Calvary, people of every faith and background live, work, pray, serve, and raise their families side by side, and they do it with love. This example is just one of the modern miracles that Israel has given to the world. And just in closing, the leaders in this chamber know better than anyone else the challenges of this harmony, and it's been easily won. No, it hasn't. It has not been. It's been so tough, but it has been, some say, a miracle. What you've done is a miracle. Look at your size. Look at your chances when it all started. And you know, if you think about it, you are safer today, stronger today, and more respected today than at any time in the history of Israel. Think of it. People used to say it wouldn't exist. They don't say that anymore, do they? Yet if safety, security, and coexistence can thrive here in the winding alleys and ancient paths of Jerusalem, then surely peace and respect can flourish among the nations of the broader Middle East. The God who once dwelled among his people in this city still calls us, in the words of Scripture, the turn from evil and do good, to seek peace and pursue it. So he still whispers truth into the hills and knolls and valleys of his magnificent creation, and he still writes hope into the hearts of his children all over the world. And that is why even after 3,000 years of pain and conflict, the people of Israel have never given up.
What a beautiful passage of this speech. Again, just listen to that. Trump is talking about the God who once dwelt among his people in this city, and he still calls us. This God who walked among us, he still calls us. In the words of the Scriptures, turn from evil and do good, seek peace and pursue it. So God, the Lord, still whispers peace into the hills and the knolls and the valleys of his magnificent creation, and he still writes hope into the hearts of his children all over the world. That is a beautiful passage, and it speaks to a different Trump. This is not Trump lording his big triumphal moment over Israel or the world. This is, all throughout the speech, Trump is praising Netanyahu. He's praising the Arab Muslim allies that helped make this happen. He's praising Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who helped make this happen. He's praising Israeli advisors to Netanyahu, like Ron Dermer, the Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister. He's constantly giving praise to other people, and then he keeps focusing on God, the God of the Bible. And that allusion right there is to Jesus, to the God of the New Testament, who dwelt among us and is still whispering his biblical spiritual truth in our hearts. What a beautiful and unexpected passage from Donald J. Trump.
We are going to have hope, harmony, opportunity, and happiness here in the spiritual and geographic center of the entire world. That's what you are. Israel, America, and all of the nations of the Middle East will soon be safer, stronger, greater, and more prosperous than ever before. And I want to thank you all once again for this exceptional honor. This has been truly an honor. It's seldom that a president is invited to do this. And I love Israel. I'm with you all the way. You will be bigger, better, stronger, and more loving than ever before. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And God bless the Middle East. Thank you, everybody. Good luck. Thank you very much. Thank you.
What a great way for Donald Trump to end this speech. He says to the nation of Israel, after painting a beautiful vision of what the Middle East could look like, Trump says to Israel, I love you. I'm with you. God bless you. Those are the words Israelis have longed to hear. They, not just the words, but the actions of an American commander-in-chief standing with them to win the war and win the peace. Thank you, President Trump. What an amazing, amazing visit, an amazing address. And I'm so grateful. What was the most controversial moment in President Trump's speech in Israel? The moment that also brought the longest standing ovation and thunderous, dare I say, deafening applause of the entire address. Without question, it was this. Take a look.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. Come on. By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that? All right, enough controversy for the day, right? Actually, I don't think it's very controversial. So, you know, I see so popular. You are a very popular man. You know why? Because you know how to win.
Wow, we did not see that coming. President Trump asking Israeli President Isaac Herzog, who, as you know, has been on the show, did his first ever interview with the Rosenberg Report with TBN just a few months ago. Here's Trump saying to Herzog, hey, I have an idea. Why don't you give Netanyahu a pardon? And what happened? Of course, you saw the opposition, that side of the Knesset. They didn't stand up at all. They did not applaud. They did not think that was a good idea. But the right, which is 2/3 of the parliament, erupted in a standing ovation, shouts of "Bibi, Bibi." Trump goes on. You saw it. Trump goes on to call Netanyahu one of Israel's greatest wartime leaders, and that part is true. I can't tell you whether Herzog is going to actually give Netanyahu a pardon. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I can tell you without question, Netanyahu has emerged as Israel's greatest wartime leader. And I don't think there's anyone close. The closest maybe would be David Ben Gurion, the first prime minister in the War of Independence. Maybe that's the peak because that was the beginning of the country. But Netanyahu has rescued the country from a 7-front war led by the wicked regime in Iran. And that's a huge victory. Whatever else you think of Netanyahu, you have to agree, I believe, with Trump that that Bibi has won this war with American help, no question, but he won this war because he wouldn't surrender. And that makes him one of Israel's greatest wartime leaders. Now, Netanyahu is on trial. One of the charges, one of the indictments, is that he accepted, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of fine cigars and fine champagne from people who wanted political benefits from him. And that's Trump saying, who cares about that? Like compared to this. And then he concludes that. I'm just recapping because I want you to make sure that you've processed and heard what Trump said. Trump ends that riff by saying, do you know why you're so popular, Bibi? Because you know how to win. And Trump doesn't just mean political victories, although that's certainly true. And Netanyahu is the longest serving prime minister in the history of modern Israel. Literally nobody's even close to him, okay? But he's also won this huge war and defeated every enemy that Israel has. And that's astonishing. Now the question is this going to change the calculus in terms of the dynamics of internal Israeli politics? It's very rare, and I would say risky, for President Trump or any American president to sort of stick his hand in domestic politics in Israel, to ask for a pardon and to basically Trump was saying this guy should be reelected. Why would you elect anybody else? There's other parts of the speech, you should go watch the whole speech, that Trump basically says that. Like, why would you want anyone else to lead you other than Netanyahu? Now, currently, that is not what the polls are saying. And I think it's going to take some time to see if the victory that Netanyahu has achieved, getting all these hostages back, when most Israelis thought it wouldn't happen, and the left and even some on the center said Bibi didn't even want to get all the hostages back, that he would keep staying at war no matter what, even if it sacrificed all the hostages. That was so unfair. I said that to you at the time, that it was just not right. That was not Netanyahu. For whatever other criticisms I have and other people have of Netanyahu, it's not true, and it's actually a ghastly, unfair attack to say that Bibi didn't care about the hostages and wouldn't get them back, but he has gotten them back. Will that and Trump's arrival and the peace plan and how much Trump, who is beloved in Israel, I mean, he's off the charts, the most popular political leader in Israel. It's Donald Trump, and because he's done so much for Israel, and he deserves that respect and that appreciation and that the elation that Israelis have. But will all that, essentially a political endorsement of Bibi Netanyahu, mean that Netanyahu will run again? I've told you on the show that I thought he wouldn't run again, that he would win and then he would step off the stage. Now, I'm not so sure. But we're going to have to watch over the weeks and months ahead to see, because elections are not really supposed to be held until the fall of 2026. They could start sooner. Netanyahu himself could call them sooner, or the opposition could find a way to trigger new elections. So we'll see. But a lot of change, a lot to follow, a lot to cover, and that's why we're going to keep doing it so carefully right here on the Rosenberg Report. Well, that's our show for tonight, and thank you so much for watching as we continue to kick off this fourth season of the Rosenberg Report. I'm so grateful. Look, I want you to keep praying without ceasing that Hamas keeps its word and returns every single body of the deceased hostages back to Israel. They have betrayed the Trump agreement so far on this, just in the early hours. We'll see. Trump has a lot of leverage, and so does Israel, right? Israel could go back to war if we have to, because we now have all our live hostages back. I don't think Trump wants Israel to go back to war. Trump is saying it's a new era for a new Middle East. But Trump has to prove now that he will force Hamas to keep its promise. So let's keep praying that that actually is what happens. Let's keep praying, too, for the spiritual and emotional recovery of every Israeli and every Palestinian as we move, what we hope is to this new era of calm. The scars on Israeli society, on Israeli and Palestinian hearts and minds are devastating. Israel and Gaza are not going to be the same going forward. Of course, we'll look at that from multiple angles going forward. But I ask you to keep praying for that and for the Joshua Fund as we serve and minister to Israelis and Palestinians through the local believers in Jesus, and for All Israel News and All Arab News as we cover it from every angle. Thank you. Again, thank you so much for watching. Have a great week with your family and friends. I hope you'll tell your family and friends this story and share this video with them, and thank God for this huge, miraculous answer to prayer.